The high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers. The wall of power will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is Metza. We are going to be saluting one of Minnesota's greatest entertainers, a comedian, actor, author, and game show host, Louie Anderson, who passed away at the age of 68, January 21st. We've got three great guests on who have worked with Louie, knew him personally, as well as I had the chance to meet him when he was first starting out. And so we're going to be sharing tonight's show with Lizz Winstead, Marty Keller, and Jeff Gerbino. Lizz Winstead is the co-creator and former head writer of The Daily Show and co-founder of Air America Radio. She helped change the very landscape of how people get their news. She's also an author, and she spends a lot of her time in New York City helming the Abortion Access Front, an exclusive New York City-based reproductive rights organization that she founded in 2015. Liz, how are you tonight? It's so good to hear your voice again.
I'm good to be with you. I'm glad to be with you. Great to hear you. And just sad that, we're here talking about Louie in the past tense, but also, as I was saying to somebody earlier, I think a lot of times when you hear tributes of famous people, you don't often hear from the people who knew them intimately or knew them that could really bring to light who they were as people. And I'm glad that we're able to do that for Louie with people who loved him, know him, and can really share stories about who he was as a man.
Yes, and he was a hell of a man. We have one of his good friends with us, along with Lizz Winstead tonight, Marty Keller. Marty's an author, a former pop culture journalist. He's written 2 books, Hijinks and Hearsay, a nice history of the Minneapolis rock and roll and comedy scene, which featured some nice stuff about Louie Anderson. And he's also written a book that came out recently called The Space Pen Club, all about UFOs. Marty, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thanks for gathering us together to talk about Louie. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's hear a little bit of Louie before we get into it, just kind of to remind us what a great personality he was.
I stayed at one house of some friends, and I didn't know they had dolls. They had a room full of dolls. I was staying in it. They showed me they opened the door. You'll be in this room. All the dolls had the same teeth as me. And just like me, when you lay them down, their eyes close. Did you ever stay at someone's house and they are trying to say it's a bed that you're going to sleep on? It's a day bed. Well, it's night right now, though. The cat sleeps on it. Not tonight. The cat doesn't sleep on it. No. I couldn't go to sleep. The dolls were all... I finally had to bring them all in the bed and lay them all down to get their eyes to close.
Yeah, that was the great Louie Anderson. I had the pleasure of meeting Louie, my very first gig in Minneapolis. I sold tickets at Dudley Riggs, etc. on 7 Corners. And Louie did some of his first shows there. I remember he opened up for satirist Paul Krasner. He might have even opened up for Henny Youngman. So I got to see him. He was starting out, and it was so fun to watch his rise. Lizz Winstead, when did you first meet Louie?
I met Louie. I met him years ago before he started doing comedy, just briefly, over when he was performing at Mickey Finn's. And I really met him when he was doing, it was Joel and Jet, the Comedy All-Stars over at Dudley Riggs. And I had met him then, but it was really after he had moved away come back. And I was starting to grow as a comedian in the Twin Cities, that I really met Louie, because he was always at the clubs. He was always looking at new people, always coming in, and always just incredibly supportive and sweet. And I remember always thinking, like, why is somebody this famous being nice to me?
He was a real guy. Yeah, well, he was nice to me, and I was just selling tickets,
Yeah.
Marty, when did you meet Louie Anderson, Marty Keller?
Well, I first encountered Louie as a journalist writing at City Pages, and quite a few stories about him. Eventually became friends with him, which is when you cross that line, you've broken one of the rules of journalism: never become friends with the people you're writing about. But pretty hard to resist Louie Anderson. He was a charming, way funny guy, even funnier off stage than on. And he could go places, obviously, off stage that he would never talk about on and during his stand-up act. And then I also did some publicity in the Minnesota area over the past 10 years when he would do kind of one-off shows in the Twin Cities to try new material or, just get his chops. A lot of those were at area clubs like in Maple Grove and Shakopee and places like that. So it was a thrill for people in those communities to see a A-lister comic working in their backyard, if you will.
Well, I had the pleasure of seeing his show just 2 or 3 years ago. Jeff Moritko, a good buddy of mine, had a place called Moe's in Mounds View, and Louie came on. I believe it was probably a Scott Hansen gig, and we had the nicest dinner afterwards. And fame never changed the guy. Liz, talk about what that the comedy scene, when you got involved, and how powerful it was, and where all those guys ended up. I mean, a lot of them became really had a place in the national comedy scene.
Yeah, I mean, I started out 1982, I think it was, or 3 maybe. I always forget. And the Dudley Riggs was dominating, and Scott Hansen was just starting the Comedy Gallery, and Scott Novotny and Stephanie Hodge had the Comedy Cabaret over on 28th Street, and there was so many comedy rooms that had amateur night or open stage or open mic night where you could get up and do material. And the first time I ever set foot on stage, Jeff Cesario was the host of the open mic night at Dudley Riggs. And I remember him saying, you had some pretty funny stuff there. And I was just blown away because you just run on true adrenaline.
Sure.
But I think one of the things that I bet Marty can speak to this too, but one of the things that was so incredible about this Minneapolis comedy scene was there was so much support, and there were so many places to work that you could hide out here and develop your act. And while you were growing as a comic, you could try things out, you could get your sea legs, you could develop your confidence. Out of the sort of limelight of having to go to one of the coasts like many other people had to do. And then people would come through. You would start befriending national level comedians. And so when you were ready to move, you would have somebody and a community of people who could help you get on the open mics and get some stage time in LA or New York or wherever you choose to go. And for me, when Louie would come back in town, he would hang out at the clubs and saw me develop and was always just so sweet and saying, keep at it. And so when I got my first headlining gig at the Comedy Gallery, he flew in and put his name on the flyer as my opening act so that people would come and see my shows, and like, that's just the way the dude was. And it wasn't, he just wanted to, and it's just, I just can't say enough about, except for that I just wish I saw him more. And I just, that's really, it was an incredible community that can't be undersold. as a place that really churned out incredible talent. In fact, people moved here. Harmon Leon and Joni Marchenko, and there was people who moved to Frank Conniff, people who moved to the Twin Cities so they could develop in front of audiences and get better.
And of course, we also fondly remember the late great Scott Hansen, who was such a prime mover in the comedy scene. When I used to bump into Tom Arnold at night at 22nd and Lyndale at Super America, and we both knew we were in the entertainment business, and then we bumped into each other at a benefit on Ford Parkway for some union gig, and I got to be really tight with Tom, and so I was able to watch a lot of that early 80s stuff happen. I was there the night Tom opened and met Roseanne Barr, and we know kind of how that worked out.
And stole my car for 3 days. Let me just interrupt.
Tell us that story, Lizz Winstead.
Oh, my gosh. So, if you'll remember that night, I was hosting that, and I was hosting that show, and Roseanne was the headliner, and Tom was the middle act. And Tom was also middling for, I think it was Jay Leno or somebody else at the rib place over on Nicollet. So Tom was going back and forth.
Market Barbecue.
So Tom was going back and forth and said, "Can I use your car?" And I foolishly said yes. And then he and Roseanne at the end of the run were like, "I think we like each other," and liked each other a lot for about 3 days, and stole my car. And I finally was like pounding down Tom to get my car and my car keys back from I think at the Hilton downtown. It was insane.
Well, I remember, did you ever have the pleasure of partying across from the CC Club?
Oh, the Bohemian Club. They called their house the Bohemian Club because all of the furniture was made out of cases of Bohemian Club, empty Bohemian Club beer. They built a stereo thing for their TV, a coffee table. Yeah, it was crazy.
Well,
I wanted to go back to something Liz said about Twin Cities being kind of a ground zero comedy and people coming here. Not only did the wannabes come here, but the people who were well established over the years, like Robin Williams, would come here to do club gigs because the Twin Cities had a reputation as being having some of the smartest comedy IQ audiences in the country. I mean, it had that reputation. That's no BS. And the fact that guys like Robin Williams or I think Leno did a few of those gigs, and some of these other guys would come here, including Louie, would come back and try new stuff and hang out in the clubs. And it speaks highly of the culture we had here, and that not only in the 80s, but extended into the aughts.
It's so true, Marty. And I have to say that, one of the things that I think made it so special, and I don't know that anybody has captured the lightning in a bottle the way it happened here. But as a performer, it was so, and I don't know if it's just because Minnesotans generally want to give you a chance, but you would fail joke by joke. It wasn't like you bombed outright. You would bomb joke by joke. People are like, "No, I don't think so, but what else you got?" It's almost like, "Oh, I'm still here and I'm not getting stuff thrown at me." And it's incredible to think about audiences being like that now, or thinking about civility now, and it's just the whole world is so different now. But when you're trying to take somebody's dollars and say you're going to make them laugh, the fact that you were just given such an opportunity to win people over, it speaks volumes just of folks in Minnesota too.
Well, and you created a great launching pad for yourself, Lizz Winstead. And I know when you come back and you've played the sold-out shows at the Parkway Theater, people really adore Lizz Winstead. Like all of all the folks that'll be talking tonight adored, Louie Anderson. I remember, the Bohemian Club, they had one piece of art on the wall, and it was a burnt pizza nailed to the wall. But I remember, Lizz Winstead, having a couple parties at your apartment in Kenwood, and which were always a blast. But I'm telling you what, musicians can be tough on each other. But, boy, those comedians, man, you get out of the room for a minute, and you better watch your back when you come back in. But Louie seemed to didn't have that killer instinct that a lot of those comedians did. Would you agree with that, Liz?
I would say, Louie had a tremendous dark side when he needed to be,
Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
Just really in a fun way, he'd be, but it was part of that passive-aggressive thing where it's like, do you suppose he thought about wearing that at all, going out? How much time do you suppose he put into wearing that? What do you think? Always just this kind of opening up this side thing of passerby. He would do it in his act about his parents. Right. Look at that, But Louie himself would have that too. And just having just one little subtle, really smart, funny thing that would just open up a whole can of worms that was hilarious. Marty, would you agree?
Yeah, I think Louie was a master of snark. And it was very abbreviated snark, but it was so effective because there was no bullshit around it. It went right to the heart of the matter, and it was usually, something he would utter or mutter under his breath, but you could hear it. And he didn't mince any words. Economy was a huge value for him, and he leveraged that time and again, whether he was offering a personal opinion or improvised stage.
Oh,
Marty,
true. The man his brevity and his choice of words. He wasn't one to ramble. Some comics are really funny when they're just you look at someone like Louis Black, right, who's kind of getting to the point is part of the persona. With Louis, he was so judicious with every word, and the one thing that I often say about Louis, one of the things that I love the most about him and his comedy was that there is an amount of confidence and bravery that it takes to pause on stage as a comedian. And Louis had so much confidence in his storytelling and was so good at it and understood that a pause could be so brilliant for effect, and he didn't have fear in silence. And I love that so much about his performances.
I think that's exactly right. Louis was a student of the great American comedy masters, starting with Jack Benny and Jonathan Winters, folks like that from the 60s that we all grew up watching on Ed Sullivan, most likely, or Red Skelton. But he really studied those guys. He was a great craftsman. Even, in his later years, he would tape record his stand-up acts and listen to it back in the hotel room later and sort of do a self-critique, a download on, this joke bombed or this sucked or I have to redo this. And so he was a disciplined artist that way, and he really, if you watch any old Jack Benny programs, you can see where Louis took a lot of Benny's skills at timing, facial expressions primarily, which were all very endearing to audiences as they were, as Louis proved time and again with his audiences.
Marty, did you've actually spent some time with Louis out in California or Las Vegas? Where exactly did you spend one-on-one time with Louie Anderson?
Well, I spent a lot of time with Louie in L.A. Unfortunately, I never spent any time with him in Vegas. Excuse me. He's lived there for many years, and I just never got around to visiting him there. But I also spent a lot of quality time with him when he would visit here and when he still lived here. I mean, we had a lot of good times together. He was a wonderful person just to hang out with because number one, he was a great listener. And number two, he really had insights into people, including anyone he was around, he was almost kind of a lawn chair shrink, if you will. He could analyze people pretty quickly, and his, I won't say judgment, but his analysis of you was always very much from the heart. He never meant to hurt anybody with things he would say negatively, although I'm sure there's some other comics around the country that would say, well, that's not exactly true. But
well, I would also suggest that people go back and track down the two shows that Mark Maron played that when he had Louie on twice. Marty, we're going to have to run here in a bit. Lizz Winstead, thank you for your time. Liz, give us a 30-second, how do you think Louie will be remembered in the comedy world?
I think Louie will be remembered in the comedy world as somebody who was a consistent force in stand-up, who brought his own brand and who brought his own take. He'll be remembered as one of a kind, and he'll be remembered as somebody who really took risks. Louie wasn't afraid when you look at his stand-up and taking risks on things that, were new to him, whether it was animation, whether it was doing a game show, whether it was doing baskets. Louie did what he loved, and consistently through all of that, stand-up was at the forefront.
Lizz Winstead and Marty Keller, thank you so much for your time tonight. We've got to get to Jeff Gerbino here, but thanks you so much for your time, and Louie Anderson, rest in peace. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Welcome back to the last set of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We have on the line one of the foremost comedians in the Twin Cities for years. He was called by the St. Paul Pioneer Press one of the founding father of the Twin Cities comedy scene. But before we get to Jeff Gerbino, we're going to hear a little bit more about Louie Anderson, who are we saluting in tonight's episode.
Is the chicken free range? What does that even mean? It means they get to run free, Louie. Before they kill them? That seems crueler to me. The chickens in the coop are trying to warn her, "You're living a lie, Betty!" Not me, I'm free range. They're trying to kill you, Betty. You're just jealous because I'm a big free-range chicken.
God, we miss that guy. Jeff Gerbino, it's so nice that you took time with us tonight to chat. You've had quite a career yourself over the years, but you were at ground zero in the Minneapolis comedy scene. When I read about Mickey Fenn's, I lived in Northeast for 20 years. Mickey Fenn's had been gone by then. Where exactly was Mickey Fenn's?
Mickey Fenn's right on the corner of 14th and University.
Okay.
There used to be a place called McNamara's across the street, which the last time I was up there was for Scott Hansen's funeral, so it wasn't that long ago. And I was stunned. I hadn't been in that area in years, and I went back to it, and they had completely vacated Finn's, what used to be Finn's, or University Bar, I think they called it at one time. And they even switched it to Union Bar, which was the moniker we all used for it back in the day. It's in the AFL-CIO building on that corner. And now it's all shoppified. It's all gentrified. Oh, my God. Not only had they taken out everything in Finn's, and there was a lot more room than there used to be. We could have used some of that space. But across the street were these pretty much luxury condos. And I remember there used to be a White Castle and a Greek steakhouse, okay? And
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of place. It was a working class neighborhood, it was blue collar.
Oh, yeah. I've had a couple of beers at Max. In fact, Bob McNamara, the son of the owner, helped me sell my house in Northeast just a few months ago. So, Jeff, let's talk about Mickey Fenn's and the beginning of the comedy scene in Minneapolis, and how and when did you meet Louie Anderson?
Well, I planted the flag in January of '78, and I was very lucky in that the very first gig I ever had, it was a contest before that sort of led into this, but it was, I got paid. Oh my God, I made $25. And we did that every week, and I was like the Johnny Appleseed of comedy. I had to go around and see if those people who had signed up for the contest wanted to try it again. Many didn't. It was a one-time thing. And I just basically, it was Bill Bauer was one of the first people to come down, and then Scott Hansen shortly after him in March. And then in October of 78, a rather jolly fellow came up to me, stars in his eyes, and said, "Hey, man, I want to do this." And I said, "Really? Well, we could use people. Yeah, we could do that." And, of course, it was very ill-fated what happened in the next week. The local PBS, KTCA, had come down to tape us because we were becoming a little bit of a phenomenon there in Northeast Minneapolis. Louie proceeded to bring down every friend he ever had in the world. And I remember Bill Bauer going, "We can't seat these people. We can't seat these. They're going to ruin the taping. You know, they're going to come here just to cheer for him." And, of course, they invaded the room, and it was a combination of our people on the outside, Louie's people on the inside, who welcomed him as conquering hero, and the rest of us fought for laughs all night long. And we crucified him for that in the coming months, especially when he learned that it's not so easy once your friends aren't in the audience anymore.
Right.
But that was how we first met him. We did not do it at that time. And Louie knew it, and he was a consummate, how should we say, Dale Carnegie type. And he slowly lowered his head and kind of apologized for what he did that night. And he got back into our good graces, and we soon became fast friends. And it was like in the Three Musketeers. You know, it was us against the world. You know, it was only 6 or 7 of us in the beginning, and it was really the core group of 3 or 4 or 5 of us. You know, Scott Hansen, Louie Anderson, myself, Bill Bauer, and Alex Cole. And there's an iconic photo of the 5 of us that's been printed and reprinted. It's in the book, Funny Thing About Minnesota. That's out about the history of comedy in the Twin Cities. It's a flawed thing, but at least it's documented, you know.
What did you what did you glean from some of those first Louie Anderson performances? Did you really feel like, no, this guy's got it?
Well, that came later. That came as we got into 1979, and it was January, and things. There was always a little letdown after the holiday period. But our crowds were starting to pick up. One night there was these obnoxious hecklers in the crowd, and I had slammed them pretty good. I'm coming from the East Coast originally, and I hit when hit, and I hit back harder, you know. And so I was getting tired of them. And I say, "Louie, I want you to finish up the show tonight." And Scott Hansen had been emceeing, and he was always a little edgy in that role. And Louie knew how to ingratiate himself to me, and I thought, let's see if he could MC the second half tonight, because Scott didn't want any part of it. And he went on, and he proceeded to lambaste these guys. And one of them eventually raised his hands up in the air in a surrendering motion and said, "All right, I'm done. I'm sorry I ever picked on fat guys when I was in high school." Louie singled him out as the big bully who had tortured him all his life. And Louie proceeded to unload. And I mean unload mercilessly. And his friend moved another table away. That's how bad he was getting immolated. And after that, I started to go, I think Louie's got it.
Oh, cool.
And he showed a reserve, an ability to ad lib. He showed an ability to roll with it. And he even finished it up pretty good. He goes, "All right, buddy. You know, I guess I can leave you alone now." And then he went right back to ripping him anyway.
Now, Jeff, what did you bring some national acts at some point into Mickey Finn's, or did that come a little later?
Yeah, there was a place at times that the real big names would come to called the Carlton Celebrity Room in Bloomington.
Sure.
You may remember that.
I would make pilgrimages.
Yeah, we put pilgrimages to David Brenner, who didn't want to meet us backstage because he was tired of something. And later I would meet Brenner, and he was a nice guy. I never was a big fan of the act, but we tried to get him. We didn't work so hot. But Rodney Dangerfield came, and we gave great homage. And I would like to thank the weird scheduling, because they used to open on a weekend there, and then they would sort of roll in through the next week, which would leave a Monday open. And we found that out and we just created a show. There's a place called Corks at the base of the Fauché Tower, where Alex Cola told me that might be a good room. And we had talked to the people there, and then I ran down there and said, how'd you like to have Rodney Dangerfield come down? He wants to see us. Mickey Finn's, we didn't have a Monday night show. So we literally created one. We told everybody we knew at Finn's to come on down. And that turned out to be a huge break in Louie's life and a pretty good break for me, too. That night he treated Rodney like a star, and eventually a relationship developed there for us, And that night I didn't even ask Rodney to go on stage, wouldn't think of it. We treated him like the star he was. He was there with a woman from the Carlton room who was the publicist, and we were all completely professional. I told everybody to stay away from him. And I talked to him a few times during the night. And then, as I was saying goodnight to the crowd, Rodney stood up. And needless to say, what happened then was magic,
Oh,
and
my
we just
God.
walked on the stage, and for the next 30, 35 minutes, everybody in that room was the happiest person on earth because they knew they were in the hottest, coolest place to be right then. And comedy was starting to pop in the Twin Cities. And the great compliment came was, great job. He mentioned everyone by name, but then Louie had been the last act of the night. And he said, and that last guy was too good.
Oh, wow.
So already the bridge was being built, there. And, of course, later on, Rodney would use him in a young comedian special, along with some other friends of mine, Bob Saget and Sam Kinison, who came along. Rodney would book me. I went out on my honeymoon in November of 79. I was able to be a busman's holiday and work Rodney's room. He always let me work his room and paid me way better than the New York comics. And, it was a good relationship that lasted over time. Rodney was he eventually would come see us at Mickey Finn's, too. And there's pictures of me with him at Mickey Finn's, and there's shots of us taken by the late Steve Bell, who was kind of like our court reporter. He would come down and take pictures of us, and there was people hanging out with us. That's how we knew it was getting hot. And, next thing you know, we were starting to sign autographs, and Louie was signing autographs, and I was signing autographs, and people were lining up to see us, and they weren't barking about a $3 cover charge, and then we bumped it up to a $5 charge. And Louie was a mover and a shaker and all that, and he'd give flowers to the ladies when they came in. He was a consummate host, he'd come in, and considering it was a dumpy bar in Northeast Minneapolis that union guys hung out at after hours, we tried to elevate it, and for a while we did. And Louie was a big part of that. He was always there, pushing us upward, and I could always rely on him. And we did shows in other places. The Artist Quarter was another place. Williams Pub was another place.
Sure.
We did a whole lot of rooms back then, and I was usually the leader heading into them, and we'd go in and do our thing. And sometimes outstate Minnesota too, but it was all brand new, and we were part of a very unique thing. And Louie and I, we kind of sensed that. And we also know that you worked against yourself a little, too, because of the fact that no one hardly knew it. They only knew that 5 minutes a night, a comedian walked out on the Tonight Show at about 11:05 Twin Cities time, and that's about all they knew from stand-up. And we were doing show 2 hours, 2 hour length.
Jeff Gerbino, I actually saw you one night at one of those comedy nights at Williams Pub where I played Tuesday nights for 4 years. I hate to say you probably know they've recently shut down last week, but I do have a little personal connection with Corks because Corky, I'm forgetting his last name now. He bartended at Nye's, where I also played for 3.5 years, and he was the guy. I didn't realize until later in life when we got to be good friends that was his place, Corks at Fauché Tower.
Yeah. Corky, oh my goodness, yeah. He was pretty happy with us that night. We carried on the show after that, but Monday night was a good night to do a show, so it lasted about a month or so, But we were kind of dedicated to Finn's. We weren't going to jump ship or anything like that. But it was a much nicer room than Mickey Finn's, I might add, to perform in. So we kind of got a taste for what a better room looked like, because the logistics of Mickey Finn's weren't the greatest, but it was our ugly little home. and we were proud of it, and it was a unique time. The 70s going into the 80s were the last age of experimentalism, and we were certainly experimenting. And we're all a very diverse group. We're all very different from each other. Scott and Louie would occasionally fight over fat jokes, but, that was about it. Right. But we're all very new. Our acts were different, and Louie was in the middle of that mix, and he was smart, sharp, and his friendly thing is one thing. You got to be a bit of a barracuda in this business, and Louie has barracuda in him. A lot of people have been throwing out the laurel wreaths, and as a guy who knew him for 43 years, I don't want to take any of that away. I can't, because he's built that legacy. But there is also a dark side. And when I say dark side, I mean it in a good way. It's that ability to, hey, that guy doesn't like me, and I'm going to keep an eye out for that guy, and I'm going to show him who I am. He's going to get to see who I am. But if he continues to mess with me, I'll let him know that ain't cool. And Louie had his vendettas, over the years. And my favorite one is the fact that Jim McCauley, the gateway to the Tonight Show, he was the talent coordinator. Okay. And Louie got pissed. Yeah, Louie got pissed, and he had a tape when he were doing a little documentary on Louie one time, and he had them visit Jim McCauley, and he just looked at the camera and said, he's not right for this show. He's never going to be right for this show, and I just don't think he's the kind of act that works on the Tonight Show. And then Louie proceeded to show all the introductions that Johnny would do over the years. Here's a break, young. Like Louie Anderson. Here's making his third appearance with us, Louie Anderson. Making his sixth appearance, Louie Anderson. And he would go back, loop it back to Jim McCauley going, he'll never be right for the Tonight Show. And I know for a fact, he always said he never sent it to him, but I have it on unequivocal knowledge from Mr. McCauley himself, who came out to see me several times. And he said, he sent me that tape. So funny. He sent it. And to me, I was like, Louie, I just love you more for doing that, because everybody hated him. The late, great Bob Saget was not a fan of Jim McCauley either, friend of Louie, friend of mine. And Bob used to say, I still have to go over my material, even though I'm on a national TV show. I still have to talk through what I'm going to say with that clown.
Wow.
He was a tough nut. Yeah, and Louie handled, let me give credit, that was Louie's toughest thing. He had to pole vault over Jim McCauley to get in, because McCauley wasn't for him, but other people on the Tonight Show had kind of heard about him and saw him on the Young Comedian special. And they basically said, why are you blocking this guy? And Louie's talent overcame,
Jeff Gerbino, you know more than anybody how tough the entertainment business, especially the comedy business, is. So we got about a minute left. So tell us, as a friend of Louie Anderson's and watching his career from the very beginning to the end, when he's winning Emmy Awards and he's playing Vegas and he's hosting game shows, what did it mean to you as Louie Anderson's friend to see that?
Well, I told Louie the same thing I told Scott a few days before he passed on. I did not know that Louie was going to pass on. It was 5 days later, but I said, Louie, you got to do it all, and we got to do some of it all, But we raised families, we got to live and visit places that nobody else ever got to live, we literally lived by our wits. How many people can say that? And Louie, you know what? Just want you to know. I said, you did it all. And there's nothing more that can be said. Nothing can ever be taken away from your legacy. And I know he started to cry. I started to cry. But it was a great moment. And for a great man. Someone I'm proud to call my friend.
Jeff Gerbino, this is a great way to end the show. This tribute to Louie Anderson with our guests Marty Keller, Lizz Winstead, and the great Jeff Gerbino. Jeff, thanks for sharing these stories, your love for the man, and good luck to you, and I hope to see you down the road.
Yeah, I'll be back in the Twin Cities sooner or later. Right now I'm down in Florida, God's waiting room.
Okay, Jeff. Thanks so much, man.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, brother. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Wallen Power Radio Hour. The show is produced by Paul Metza, engineered by Patrick Lilia. We'd like to thank our guests, Lizz Winstead, Jeff Gerbino, and Marty Keller, and a very heartfelt tribute to the late, great Louie Anderson. My book, Alphabet Jazz, is coming out in March. Poetry, prose, stories, and songs. Follow me at paulmetza.com to find out more about that. And remember, like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.
Someday, the high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers. The wall of power will fall. And someday, the high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers. The wall of power will